Ever stop to think what actually stops a new building from falling down, getting damp, or becoming a complete fire trap? Well, it's not just good fortune. It's a really detailed set of rules designed to keep us all safe. Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to unlock the UK's building regulations, the absolutely essential, but let's be honest, often confusing rulebook for pretty much any construction project.
Right, first things first, let's get one thing straight because this catches so many people out. Planning permission and building regulations are two completely different things. Think of it like this. Planning is about what you can build and where it can go. It's all about how it looks and fits into the local area. But the building regs, they're all about how you have to build it, the technical nuts and bolts that make sure a building is safe, healthy, and up to scratch. You'll often need to get a tick for both.
So here's how we're going to break it all down. We'll kick off with the rules themselves, then we'll dig into the three big pillars of the whole system: safety, health, and sustainability. And we'll wrap up by looking at how you actually stay on the right side of all these rules.
So where do these rules actually live? Well, they're all bundled up in a set of official guides known as the approved documents.
Now, I know what you might be thinking. A massive government rulebook sounds like a total nightmare, right? But it's actually really cleverly organized. Each approved document is like a chapter, and each chapter gets a letter for a different topic. It starts logically with Part A for structure, moves on to Part B for fire safety, and goes all the way through to really modern concerns like Part O for overheating and even Part S for electric vehicle charging points. Each one gives you the practical, hands-on guidance you need.
Okay, let's dive into our first pillar, and it's the big one: safety. These rules have been built up over hundreds of years, often in response to disasters, to protect us from the most basic dangers a building can present. They really are the foundation of a safe home or workplace.
Within this safety pillar, there are 4 documents that are just non-negotiable. You've got Part A, which makes sure the building itself is strong enough and isn't going to collapse. Part B is all about fire safety. That's a huge and incredibly important one. Part J deals with the safe installation of things like boilers and wood burners. And Part K is there to stop us from falling, tripping, or walking into things.
And believe me, these rules get down to the nitty-gritty. Take Part K, for instance. It states that the pitch, or steepness, of a staircase in a house can't be more than 42 degrees. Anything steeper, and the risk of a serious fall just gets too high. It's a tiny detail, a single number, that has a massive impact on keeping us safe every single day.
Now, one of the most brilliant concepts in Part B, the fire safety doc, is this idea called fire compartmentation. The goal is to build invisible, fire-resistant boxes inside a building. So if a fire breaks out in one compartment, the special walls and floors are designed to hold it back for a specific amount of time, often 30 or 60 minutes, which gives everyone vital time to get out safely.
This table is a perfect example of how the regulations aren't just guesswork. Part B doesn't just pluck numbers out of thin air for fire exits. It gives you clear, data-driven tables, just like this one. It connects the number of people in a space directly to the minimum number of escape routes they need. A room with up to 60 people can get away with one exit, but the moment you hit 61, you need at least 2. Simple as that.
And to wrap up on safety, let's look at Part J. Honestly, this one is a straight-up lifesaver. The rule is crystal clear. If you put in a new wood-burning stove, a gas fire, anything like that, you must also install a carbon monoxide alarm in the same room. It's not a suggestion, it's mandatory, and it's there to protect us from that silent killer, CO poisoning.
All right, so we're safe from immediate danger. But what about our long-term health and comfort? Well, that brings us to pillar number 2, healthy spaces. This is all about creating environments that actually support our well-being by dealing with things like moisture, noise, fresh air, and accessibility.
The main chapters of the rulebook we're talking about here are Part C, which is all about stopping damp getting into the fabric of the building. Then there's Part E, which stops you from hearing every cough and sneeze from your neighbors. Part F makes sure we have a good supply of fresh air. And Part M is all about making buildings accessible and usable for everyone, including people with disabilities. You know, we don't often think about it, but ventilation is absolutely crucial for our health. We produce so much moisture just from cooking, showering, even breathing. Part F gets really specific about how much air needs to be sucked out of wet rooms like kitchens and bathrooms to stop damp, condensation, and mold from taking hold.
Your kitchen extractor fan, for example, needs to be powerful enough to shift at least 30 liters of air every second.
And what about noise? I mean, nobody wants to be able to hear their neighbor's TV as clearly as their own, right? Well, that's where Part E comes in. It's designed to give us all a bit of acoustic privacy. It sets minimum standards for how well walls and floors between homes have to block out sound. And to prove it, builders often have to get sound insulation tests done before the project is signed off, just to make sure you won't be driven mad by noise.
Okay, on to our third and final pillar, and this is a really hot topic right now: sustainability. This is probably the fastest changing part of the regulations as we try to make our buildings use less energy and cope with our changing climate.
The key players here are Part L, which is the big one for energy efficiency, the relatively new Part O, which tackles the problem of houses getting too hot, and Part G, which covers things like sanitation, but also water efficiency.
To really get your head around Part L, we need to talk about something called a U value. It sounds technical, but it's actually simple. It's just a score for how good something, like a wall, a roof, or a window, is at stopping heat from escaping. The key thing to remember is the lower the U value, the better the insulation. A low U value means less heat loss, which means lower energy bills.
In this chart, it shows you everything you need to know. It's the impact of Part L in a nutshell. An old solid brick wall might have a really poor U value, say 0.7 or even higher. But look at the requirement for a new wall today. It has to be 0.18 or less. That is a gigantic leap in performance, meaning so much more of the heat you pay for actually stays inside your home.
But here's the catch. As we get better and better at making our homes airtight and keeping heat in for winter, we create a new problem. How do we stop them from getting unbearably hot in the summer?
And this is exactly what the new Part O is for. It's a really smart two-pronged attack on the problem. First, it puts limits on how much glass you can have, especially on the sunny south and west sides of a house, to stop so much heat from the sun getting in. And second, it makes sure there's enough ventilation designed in to let you purge all that built-up heat, especially at night. It's a perfect example of the rules evolving to face modern challenges.
So, we've covered what the rules are about. But how does it all work in practice? How are they enforced? And how do they keep up with the times?
Well, the first thing to know is that these rules are not set in stone, gathering dust on a shelf. They are very much a living rulebook. Just look at this timeline. You can see how dynamic it is. Major updates to energy efficiency, ventilation, and safety have all happened in just the last few years, all to keep pace with new research, new technology, and new challenges. And the actual process for getting a project approved flows a pretty clear path. It all starts at the design stage, where you have to show how you're meeting all the rules in the approved documents. Then, before you even pick up a spade, you have to notify a building control body. That could be your local council or a private company. They will then pop in to inspect the work at key stages. Once it's all finished and they're happy, you get your completion certificate. And that piece of paper is incredibly important.
So, it's easy to look at all this and just see red tape, isn't it? A barrier to getting things done. But there's so much more than that. They're not there to stifle creativity. They're there to provide a foundation. They guarantee a minimum standard of quality and make sure that our homes, our schools, and our workplaces are fundamentally safe, healthy, and built to last.
Look, we've really just scratched the surface today, but the next time you walk into a building, maybe just take a moment to think about all those invisible rules that are working around the clock to keep you safe, warm, and healthy. If you have questions about your own project or you just want to dive deeper into any of this, a fantastic resource is buildingregulationscopilot.com. You can find detailed guidance and get answers to your queries there. Thanks for watching The Explainer.